This is chapter number 7, Weavers, Iron Smelters and Factory Owners. Cotton mills come up. We are talking about India. Various mills at that time that came up. So how did they came up, and how did they come up, and what were the problem they were facing? The first cotton mill that was established in India, it was not a cotton mill actually, it was a spinning mill. And this spinning basically is making of thread from the content, like the cotton, etc., raw cotton. So we are talking about Bombay, 1854. Please remember, first cotton mill in India, which was a spinning mill, and it was established in Bombay in 1854. Okay, and Bombay became a very important port, very important city, very important trade center, because at that time it was all import and export through the sea route. And I'm talking about the early 19th century. This Bombay became a very important port, and the export was not only to England, it was also to China. Especially I'm talking about these spinning results. So all this area which you see here, this is very famous fertile area. This round, the filled round circle, this is showing the place where there was black soil. And as we have seen, black soil is suitable for cotton produce. So this was the best area, and since the raw material can be easily being received, or the raw material can easily be transported to Mumbai, that is why this Mumbai became so important. This is a picture I am showing you, and this you see mostly the spinning work is being done by women, and this is the picture of 1900. So this 1900, by 1900, in Bombay itself, in Mumbai, today's Mumbai itself, around 84 mills, 84 number of mills they came up. And mostly the mills were owned by either Parsis or the Gujaratis. You know this left or western coast of India, they are the land or the home for the Parsis. Parsi came from the Arab world, and they became indigenous. And Gujarati, we have a Kutchi, etc. This Gujarati are considered to be the best business mind. Even the most rich person in India is a Gujarati only. So that is how they made a lot of money through trade to China and England. And what about other places? Ahmedabad, the first mill was in 1861, and just next year, 1862, it was a mill which came up in Kanpur. Kanpur at that time it was under United Provinces. Today it is in Uttar Pradesh. So when this mill came up, there was an exponential increase in the demand of labor, because who is going to do the work? Labor. So what happened? All the poor peasants, the farmers, the artisans, the artists, the agricultural laborers, they just moved or migrated to the cities because they were getting work in the mills and they were required there. But when this textile industry came up, as I said, everything comes with challenges. So at that time, textile industry faced many challenges, many problems. The first was that, the textile which were imported from Britain, they were very cheap because they were coming from an industrial production. And it was very difficult to compete with them. So there was a great competition between this Indian and British textiles, and British won in this race. Okay. And there is one more aspect. What would happen in any country if you want the industrial growth of the indigenous people or indigenous industries? What would happen? The import will be either stopped, or the duty or the taxes levied on import will be huge. That is, the person outside will never come here. They will never send any stuff, and even if he sends it, it will be of very highest rate. So this is how the government. This happened in India when we got this independence. So people, this say 10 rupees, this we are getting, okay, and 100 we this coming from outside. Nobody will take 100. They will take it in 10 rupees, right? So the government does that in every country. But the problem with us was what? The problem with us was we were not having any government, but basically we were having British rule. And British rule, they never ever cared about anyone except their munafa, their amount, money. Okay. So first thing, that the local industries, we didn't get any protection. But still we did good job. How? In textile industry and iron and steel industry also, you'll see that whenever we got boon or our demand was there, it was only when British demand was not there, or it was say moved somewhere else. I'll give you an example. What happened in First World War? The textile what was prepared or made in Britain, they all went to the for feeding the First World War. And when all the textile is going there, then Britain cannot export it to any other country like India. So now the textile industries of India, the British said the Indian factory, they wanted the Indian factory to make these textiles so that they can send it to this world war. And that only happened when British has some problem. Otherwise, they didn't care. Okay. Now, if I talk about iron and steel, I need to start with a story. I'll start a story or the incident or the event that happened in Mysore. Tipu Sultan. He was Shere Mysore. He was tiger of Mysore, and his father also, Hyder Ali. He was also a very great ruler, very powerful ruler, and they didn't just bend down before Britishers. They fought, and they fought with all their valor, power. So this is the sword I am talking about. I'll just talk about that. First, let me complete the Tipu Sultan. So Mysore, Tipu Sultan, he ruled Mysore till 1799. And he fought 4 wars, because one war is not enough for him, because Britishers cannot hold him for just one war. They had to fight 4 wars with him. Ultimately, Tipu Sultan was killed, and when he was killed while in the battle, he died with the sword in his hand. So this was the sword I am talking about, sword yani talwar. So this is a legendary sword. We need to talk about this sword. So sword was taken to England, and in museum it was taken. But we know a man, we talk about him a lot, Vijay Mallya, Kingfisher's proprietor. Now he brought back this sword in an auction, but that's a different story. Okay, so the basic thing was, this sword was so strong. It was made in a way that is the steel and the iron at that time. We are talking about that era when we were competing with British. We are not having that much of resources, but still we had this kind of stuff like this sword and other thing that were on top of its class. So you see, these are Quran ayats, and victories of war is written here, and this is the tiger head looking downwards. So this the most important thing here is this talwar or this sword was made like this, that if your dushman or your enemy is wearing all the armor, he is wearing every element that can protect him, still this talwar or this sword will penetrate. Okay, the main thing was the opponent armor, it will rip off, it will penetrate inside it. So what was the quality? You can see. So this quality of this sword has a special name, has a special technique to make it. So the quality was that it was a special type of steel. This steel, this was called as Wood's steel. Wood's steel. It was special type of steel being made all over and produced all over the South India. And this was so special that it can penetrate any armor, and because of the high carbon content in it. So carbon content mixed with the iron produces this steel, and this steel is called wood steel. And that is how this steel is what we, when we start our story of iron and steel industry in India, we start with this wood steel and we take back our discussion to Tipu Sultan. So this one more thing was that this can be made in a flowing water or wavy pattern. And these crystals of small, very small carbon crystals were embedded in the iron, and that is how this pattern has come. This carbon is an element, and if you mix this carbon with various metals and non-metals, it will change the property also. This is how happened with this wood's steel. Okay, now I'll show you the picture of Francis Buchanan. Now he is Francis Buchanan, and he came to Mysore, and he gave us the record or the content of this wood steel. So Francis Buchanan toured Mysore in 1800 after Tipu's death, and this is the wood steel I'm talking about. The third one which you see is the excellent quality of woods of which this sword was being made. We have different type of woods, knot woods, borderline. So what you see here, the pattern, is because of that carbon which I'm talking about, that special carbon. Okay, it will change the property of that iron, and that will become a very hard and very lethal weapon if you make a sword or anything with this. Even the utensils are also made out of this. How this was made, it was told by Buchanan. So this all area, not only the Mysore, all through the South India, this was made, and all these swords are made in this smelting furnaces, means the content which is coming from the smelting furnaces. So this smelting, which is called as pragalan in Hindi, the iron was mixed with, because you need to have a carbon, for that the charcoal was mixed. Charcoal is a form of wood when it is burned, and then it can be used as a heating one, right? So now these are placed in a clay pot, and the temperature is controlled, and with this control of temperature, the smelter, the praglak, the people who work with iron, with this heat, they would produce this steel ingots. Steel ingots is nothing but the round shaped steel. You know, it's a iron or steel which come, and that will be used for making different utensils and stuffs like the sword. And this was not only used in India. Okay, this was also being sent and exported to West and Central Asia. Western Asia and Central Asia. So this wood steel and the smelting work and the blacksmith work and the iron work, the steel work was so popular that it was exported also, and it was in great demand. Now what is this? What is smelting? Let us see what is smelting first. Smelting is simple process in which the rock is taken, it can be rock or a soil, and now it is heated. You know, every element has a melting point or heating point. So when it is melted or heated, the dhatu or the metal will melt, and then you will get the metal. That is how the iron is achieved or extracted from the iron ore, and other content are extracted from different their combination, which we find in the general prakriti or natural resources. So this woods has come from where? This woods is actually a word, anglicized word of Indian words, Indian languages word. Because in steel, what is steel called in Kannada? In Kannada, steel is called ukku. In Telugu, the steel is called as hukku. Kannada, ukku, Telugu, hukku. In Tamil and Malayalam, The same steel is called as urukku. Urukku. And all these mean the same thing. Ukku, hurukku, hukku, and urukku. So the English were not able to pronounce it properly, and they would call it as a word, anglicized word, and that is called woods. WOOTZ. So this steel and wood steel has come from these words only, wood steel. But I still have my apprehensions because I don't know how this woods has come from ukku, hukku, rukku. But anyways, the book is saying, history is saying, so believe it. So this is the anglicized version of all these words. Okay. So now this wood steel is famous all over the world. How? Even the greatest Michael Faraday, we know Einstein, we know these many special people, Heisenberg, etc. Michael Faraday, he was the inventor or discoverer, not inventor, discoverer of electricity and electromagnetism. So he is a very great personality who has given us the modern world. So he spent 4 years and he studied about the properties of Indian woods, Indian wood steel. That is from 1818 till 1822. He did that. But when we reached this mid 19, the art of making wood steel, the making process actually died down, completely lost. Because the problem was the iron and steel was coming now from England, Britain. So it slowly and gradually displaced what was being made by the Indian people, Indian craftsmen people. Okay, so it couldn't face the competition of British iron steel. Okay, there is a word coming, bellows. Bellows is a device or equipment that can pump air. Now you see here, this is a bag kind of thing, and it has 2 handles. So when you push this handle up, there is air come inside, and when you push it down, the air comes outside. And then this, because this charcoal etc., they need continuous air to burn, and then how you can use the iron stick etc. to work and to shape them. So this wood steel is not a child's play. Making it, this is a very specialized technique of refining iron. So production of wood steel was not very easy. So if you talk about Bihar and central India, at that time, I'm talking about end of the 19th century, every district was having a smelter who used to work for iron smelting, this making of this kind of steel, etc. And these furnaces were specially built of mitti, clay and bricks. So I'll show you this picture. These are the bricks, and here you see the charcoal is mixed with the iron, and then the steel is with certain temperature control. Finally, what we just talked about, this kind of result will come. So with charcoal you get the carbon content also. So these furnaces were built of clay and sun dried bricks. And as I said, smelting was done, it's a hard process, so it was done mainly by men. Smelting was done by men. And the bellows, this was the pumping of air to keep this charcoal burning was done normally by the women. Okay. So this every thing was decided who is going to work. If you see this picture also, you can see an idea, you will get an idea how this actual work was taking place and how people were involved here, right? As I am saying that this late 19th century, this was a craft, and the craft of iron smelting was declining. So I am talking about late 19th century, after 1870, 1880. And there is a word which, if you read this left part, you will see slag heaps, dhatu mal. That is, once the metal is being taken out of these process of smelting, whatever is remaining is slag heaps. Slag heaps. Dhatu mal in Hindi it's called as dhatu mal. Okay, let's get back now. As I was saying that this iron smelting was in decline. And what was the reason? There were multiple reasons. So the first reason was that new forest law, because you need charcoal comes from wood, and wood comes from forest. And these forests were reserved by the Britishers, and they stopped people from coming inside. So when they were not getting wood, in turn charcoal, in turn they were not able to do the iron smelting. So this was the problem. So many people, they gave up this job. They said, no, there is a problem now, we cannot go inside. But certain areas, Britishers allowed, okay, please come, because they need to have that rail plank. So they need people to come. But the problem was, the forest department, for each furnace, each bhatti, they were employing lot of tax. 100 they were earning, 500 tax they were levied on. So this, again, they cannot pay this amount of tax. So they said, okay, let's stop this work, let's do something else. And one more problem was there. This was the first one, this was the second one, tax, and first was the prevention of entering forest. The third one was the Britain, it was sending iron and steel, and the people in India, they started using this iron and steel from outside rather than using the Indian made this iron and steel. So this was multiple problems, but the new competition was still to come in earlier 20th century. So before going to that, let me show you a picture. This is a village in central India, and these are called Agarias. And these are the communities of iron smelters only. So they were doing iron smelting only at that time. Agarias. Loha Pragnal, their job was like this. And very famous community it is, So all these problems are there, but the other problem also happened, like the famines. So the famines, it devastated these people. What they will eat? Because iron smelting will only come when they can eat. Finally, they migrated and they left all the jobs in furnaces. Iron steel factories come up in India, and this is a very interesting topic, but we'll take it in the next discussion, okay? Till then, thank you so much. Take care of yourself.